Michelle Obama. The only limit to the height of your achievements is the reach of your dreams and your willingness to work hard for them. Success isn't about how much money you make. It's about the difference you make in people's lives. We should always have 3 friends in our lives: one who walks ahead, who we look up to and follow; one who walks beside us, who is with us every step of our journey; and then, one who we reach back for and bring along after we've cleared the way. You have to practice success. Success doesn't just show up. If you aren't practicing success today, you won't wake up in 20 years and be successful, because you won't have developed the habits of success, which are small things like finishing what you start, putting a lot of effort into everything you do, being on time, treating people well. There is no magic to achievement. It's really about hard work, choices, and persistence. Always stay true to yourself and never let what somebody says distract you from your goals. Do not bring people in your life who weigh you down. And trust your instincts. Good relationships feel good. They feel right. They don't hurt. They're not painful. That's not just with somebody you want to marry, but it's with the friends that you choose. It's with the people you surround yourselves with. Every girl, no matter where she lives, deserves the opportunity to develop the promise inside of her. When you've worked hard, and done well, and walked through that doorway of opportunity, you do not slam it shut behind you. You reach back, and you give other folks the same chances that helped you succeed. Women and girls can do whatever they want. There is no limit to what we as women can accomplish. I admit it, I am louder than the average human being and have no fear of speaking my mind. These traits don't come from the color of my skin, but from an unwavering belief in my own intelligence. We've got a responsibility to live up to the legacy of those who came before us by doing all that we can to help those who come after us. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, you are beautiful. One of the lessons that I grew up with was to always stay true to yourself and never let what somebody else says distract you from your goals. And so when I hear about negative and false attacks, I really don't invest any energy in them, because I know who I am. Find people who will make you better. When women and girls rise. I've seen firsthand that being president doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you are. You may not always have a comfortable life, and you will not always be able to solve all of the world's problems at once, but don't ever underestimate the importance you can have, because history has shown us that courage can be contagious, and hope can take on a life of its own. Do not die in the history of your past hurts and past experiences, but live in the now and future of your destiny. Women should have the freedom to do whatever they need to do to feel good about themselves. Walk away from friendships that make you feel small and insecure, and seek out people who inspire you and support you. My message to women: do what makes you feel good, because there'll always be someone who thinks you should do it differently. Whether your choices are hits or misses, at least they're your own. Cute's good. But cute only lasts for so long, and then it's, who are you as a person? Look at the heart. Look at the soul. Look at how the guy treats his mother and what he says about women. How he acts with children he doesn't know. And, more important, how does he treat you? Be passionate about something and lean to that strength. You see, even though back then Barack was a senator and a presidential candidate, to me, He was still the guy who picked me up for our dates in a car that was so rusted out, I could actually see the pavement going by through a hole in the passenger side door. He was the guy whose proudest possession was a coffee table he'd found in a dumpster, and whose only pair of decent shoes was half a size too small. You can't make decisions based on fear and the possibility of what might happen. We need to do a better job of putting ourselves higher on our own to-do list. Don't let anyone speak for you, and don't rely on others to fight for you. As women, we must stand up for ourselves. We must stand up for each other. We must stand up for justice for all. Countries are stronger and more prosperous when the voices and opinions of all their citizens can be heard. My goal has always been to add value, not to be redundant, not to get in the way, but to do things that lift and move things forward in a very strategic and objective way so that there are real outcomes. My happiness isn't connected to my husband's or my boss's or my children's behavior. You have control over your own actions, your own well-being. We learned about honesty and integrity, that the truth matters. That you don't take shortcuts or play by your own set of rules. And success doesn't count unless you earn it fair and square. We need to fix our souls. Our souls are broken in this nation. We have lost our way. And it begins with inspiration. It begins with leadership. Your word is your bond. You do what you say you're going to do. Because no matter what happened, I had the peace of mind of knowing that all of the chatter, the name-calling, the doubting -- all of it was just noise. It did not define me. It didn't change who I was. And most importantly, it couldn't hold me back. We have an obligation to fight for the world as it should be. All we can do as women is make the best decisions for us. And that includes everything from how you look to how you dress to whether you choose to stay at home or work when you have kids. All those decisions are so personal, and we have to start with finding what brings us joy and what brings us our own individual confidence. And if we're feeling good with those choices, then it makes what everybody else has to say less important. The arts are not just a nice thing to have or to do if there is free time or if one can afford it. Rather, paintings and poetry, music and fashion, design and dialogue, they all define who we are as a people and provide an account of our history for the next generation. The arts and humanities define who we are as a people. That is their power, to remind us of what we each have to offer, and what we all have in common. To help us understand our history and imagine our future. To give us hope in the moments of struggle and to bring us together when nothing else will. Choose people who lift you up. If I can have any impact, I want women to feel good about themselves and have fun with fashion. Just do what works for you, because there will always be someone who thinks differently. Success doesn't count unless you earn it fair and square. You've got to make choices that make sense for you because there's always going to be somebody who'll think you should do something differently. All of us are driven by a simple belief that the world as it is just won't do, that we have an obligation to fight for the world as it should be. My ability to get through my day greatly depends on the relationship that I have with other women. We have to be able to champion other women. We have to root for each other's successes and not delight in one another's failures. Whether an illness affects your heart, your leg or your brain, it's still an illness, and there should be no distinction. I was too worried about the grades, and I should have been more worried about learning. the physical and emotional health of an entire generation, and the economic health and security of our nation is at stake. This isn't the kind of problem that can be solved overnight, but with everyone working together, it can be solved. So, let's move. There are still many causes worth sacrificing for, so much history yet to be made. How hard you work matters more than how much you make. The arts can enrich all of us in this nation as individuals. The arts can enrich all of our communities and the country. And the arts can connect us to each other like nothing else can. I am desperate for change, now, not in 8 years or 12 years, but right now. No country can ever truly flourish if it stifles the potential of its women and deprives itself of the contributions of half of its citizens. To me, with age, everything has gotten better. You have way more control. You know yourself better. You all have opportunities and skills and education that so many folks who came before you never could have dreamed of. So just imagine the kind of impact that you're going to make. Imagine how you can inspire those around you to reach higher and complete their own education. Education is the single most important civil rights issue that we face today. Selfishly, working with kids gives me joy. It makes me feel like my life has a purpose. And I thought, imagine what we can do in the White House, particularly with the kids in the D.C. area, many of whom have never set foot on the White House lawn. You've got to keep your body active, even if that means just turning on some music and dancing for an hour. That's how you prepare your bodies and your minds for greatness. I hate diversity workshops. Real change comes from having enough comfort to be really honest and say something very uncomfortable. If farmers and blacksmiths could win independence from an empire, if immigrants could leave behind everything they knew for a better life on our shores, if women could be dragged to jail for seeking the vote, if a generation could defeat a depression and define greatness for all time, if a young preacher could lift us to the mountaintop with his righteous dream, and if proud Americans can be who they are and boldly stand at the altar with who they love, then surely we can give everyone in this country a fair chance at that great American dream. Being a healthy woman isn't about getting on a scale or measuring your waistline. We need to start focusing on what matters, on how we feel, and how we feel about ourselves. I think my mother taught me what not to do. She put us first, always, sometimes to the detriment of herself. She encouraged me not to do that. She'd say being a good mother isn't all about sacrificing. It's really investing and putting yourself higher on your priority list. As a mom, I know it is my responsibility, and no one else's, to raise my kids. But we have to ask ourselves, what does it mean when so many parents are finding their best efforts undermined by an avalanche of advertisements aimed at our kids? In our house we don't take ourselves too seriously, and laughter is the best form of unity, I think, in a marriage. I never cut class. I loved getting A's. I liked being smart. I liked being on time. I thought being smart is cooler than anything in the world. I hate fundraising. I hate it. Hate it. You can be a good mom and still work out, get your rest, have a career, or not. My mother encouraged me to find that balance. I can make choices that make me happy, and it will ripple and benefit my kids, my husband, and my physical health. That's hard for women to own. We're not taught to do that. Barack and I were both raised by families who didn't have much in the way of money or material possessions, but who had given us something far more valuable, their unconditional love, their unflinching sacrifice, and the chance to go places they had never imagined for themselves. Barack and I have been in the public eye for many years now, and we've developed a thick skin along the way. When you're out campaigning, there will always be criticism. I just take it in stride, and at the end of the day, I know that it comes with the territory. We can aim to create a culture where kids ask for healthy options instead of resisting them. I always encourage people to start in their own personal universe, because sometimes we as parents start thinking about the big picture. How do I change what's happening in my entire school? And how do I do it in my community? And then you get overwhelmed and it's just like, forget it, I'll just stay here in my kitchen and wait. But start small. Service is a limitless opportunity. It is the reason why we breathe. My mother's love has always been a sustaining force for our family, and one of my greatest joys is seeing her integrity, her compassion, her intelligence reflected in my daughters. I come here today as a Christian, a person of faith who believes we've all been called to serve our fellow men and women and to honor God's creation. We want our girls to know right from wrong, to always tell the truth, to treat people no matter who they are with dignity and respect, no matter how different they may seem. Because we want our girls to know we are all God's children and there's so much more that unites than divides us. I am an example of what is possible when girls from the very beginning of their lives are loved and nurtured by people around them. I was surrounded by extraordinary women in my life who taught me about quiet strength and dignity. We need all hands on deck, and that means clearing hurdles for women and girls as they navigate careers in science, technology, engineering, and math. When I'm unhappy with something, people know, because I don't want to hold on to it. I'd rather deal immediately with the stuff that bothers me, so using my network, my girlfriends, my husband, my mom, I talk a lot, I vent. If I point to anything that makes me who I am, it's that I have a whole lot of common sense. I've got a good mind and a good ability to read people and situations. Treat people with dignity and respect. Clearly this is a tough economic time, and a lot of families are hurting. So when we talk to parents, we talk about small changes for kids and things that don't cost extra money. Like adding water and eliminating sugary drinks and sodas. That's going to save money right there. Or adding a few more vegetables. We learned about gratitude and humility, that so many people had a hand in our success, from the teachers who inspired us to the janitors who kept our school clean. And we were taught to value everyone's contribution and treat everyone with respect. Cute's good. But cute only lasts for so long, and then it's, who are you as a person? Don't look at the bank book or the title. Look at the heart. Look at the soul. When you're dating a man, you should always feel good. You shouldn't be in a relationship with somebody who doesn't make you completely happy and make you feel whole. I believe that each of us, no matter what our age or background or walk of life, each of us has something to contribute to the life of this nation. People are always going to have opinions, and people have a right to their opinions. Although the circumstances of our lives may seem very disengaged, with me standing here as the First Lady of the United States of America and you just getting through school, I want you to know we have very much in common. For nothing in my life ever would have predicted that I would be standing here as the first African American First Lady. My happiness is tied to how I feel about myself. I'm not asking any of you to make drastic changes to every single one of your recipes or to totally change the way you do business. But what I am asking is that you consider reformulating your menu in pragmatic and incremental ways to create healthier versions of the foods that we all love. I tell this to my girls all the time. This journey we're on is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Good relationships feel good. They feel right. They don't hurt. Barack knows the American dream because he's lived it, and he wants everyone in this country to have that same opportunity, no matter who we are, or where we're from, or what we look like, or who we love. But, as potentially the first African American First Lady, I was also the focus of another set of questions and speculations. Conversations sometimes rooted in the fears and misperceptions of others. Was I too loud, or too angry, or too emasculating? Or was I too soft, too much of a mom, not enough of a career woman? There is nothing more important to this nation's future than investing in our young people. Communities and countries, and ultimately the world, are only as strong as the health of their women. The truth is, in order to get things like universal health care and a revamped education system, then someone is going to have to give up a piece of their pie so that someone else can have more. Elections aren't just about who votes, but who doesn't vote. Together, we can help make sure that every family that walks into a restaurant can make an easy, healthy choice. If my future were determined just by my performance on a standardized test, I wouldn't be here. I guarantee you that. I was not raised with wealth or resources or any social standing to speak of. Barack Obama was a black man that lived on the south side of Chicago, who had his share of troubles catching cabs. This is really what the White House is all about. It's the people's house. It's a place that is steeped in history, but it's also a place where everyone should feel welcome. And that's why my husband and I have made it our mission to open up the house to as many people as we can. First and foremost, I wear what I love. That's what women have to focus on, what makes them happy and what makes them feel comfortable and beautiful. If I can have any impact, I want women to feel good about themselves and have fun with fashion. Being president isn't anything like reality TV. Every day, through engagement in the arts, our children learn to open their imagination, to dream just a little bigger, and to strive every day to reach those dreams. Let me tell you something. For the first time in my adult life, I am really proud of my country, because it feels like hope is finally making a comeback. I think the most moving part of my trip to Africa so far was seeing 92-year-old Nelson Mandela, and just thinking about his life. This man has lived through a struggle that few nations have known. Learning through the arts reinforces critical academic skills in reading, language arts and math, and provides students with the skills to creatively solve problems. Every day, the people I meet inspire me. Every day, they make me proud. Every day they remind me how blessed we are to live in the greatest nation on earth. Barack is one of the smartest people you will ever encounter, who will deign to enter this messy thing called politics. My dad was a pump operator at the city water plant, and he didn't earn much money. But he was determined to pay whatever tiny part he owed for my tuition on time every month. So even though he had multiple sclerosis and often struggled just to get dressed in the morning, he hardly ever missed a day of work. His determination and love are an inspiration to me every day. Policies that support families aren't political issues. They're personal. They're the causes I carry with me every single day. Believe it or not, when we were first married, our combined monthly student loan bills were actually higher than our mortgage. Do not ever let anyone make you feel like you don't matter or like you don't have a place in our American story, because you do. Our job is, first and foremost, to make sure our family is whole. The beauty of my job is that I get to see more of that America. And that feeds me. Talking is good. Conversations have to be forever. If we truly believe that every girl in every corner of the globe is worthy of an education as our own daughters and granddaughters are, then we need to deepen our commitment to these efforts. I am so tired of fear. And I don't want my girls to live in a country, in a world, based on fear. And in my own life, in my own small way, I've tried to give back to this country that has given me so much. That's why I left a job at a law firm for a career in public service, working to empower young people to volunteer in their communities. Because I believe that each of us, no matter what our age or background or walk of life, each of us has something to contribute to the life of this nation. I love that for Barack, there is no such thing as us and them. He doesn't care whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or none of the above. He knows that we all love our country. And he's always ready to listen to good ideas. He's always looking for the very best in everyone he meets. During the first campaign, one of my jobs as my husband's spouse was to travel around the country and really listen to women. There were voices that were new to me, the voices of military spouses, many of them women, and veterans. I was overwhelmed by their challenges, and the notion that we as a country don't even know that these women exist, because we live in a country where 1% of the population protects the rights and freedoms of the other 99% of us. I thought that if I had the opportunity to serve as First Lady, I was going to use this platform to be their voice. And what has been just completely heartwarming is to see that people are really hungry for something different. The benefits of studying abroad are almost endless. Fortunately, we have help from the media. I have to say this, I'm very grateful for the support and kindness that we've gotten. People have respected their privacy, and in that way, I think, no matter what people may feel about my husband's policies or what have you, they care about children, and that's been good to see. Hope and change are hard-fought things. I love that we can trust Barack to do what he says he's going to do, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Being healthy isn't about inches, pounds, or how kids look. It's about how they feel and making sure they feel good about themselves. So rather than focusing on appearance, it's important to emphasize to kids that when we eat healthy food and stay active, we feel better, and we can perform better in everything we do, from athletics to academics. I try to have no absolute no's. I love French fries, I like a good burger, and I like pie. And that's okay. If proud Americans can be who they are and boldly stand at the altar with who they love, then surely we can give everyone in this country a fair chance at that great American dream. One of the things that attracted me to Barack Obama was his emotional honesty. Right off the bat, he said what he felt. There are no games with him, he is who he appears to be. People want to feel hopeful. I feel fortunate as a woman to have a husband who loves me and shows me in every way. I look at how my kids view exercise. They have a complete understanding that nutrition and exercise go hand in hand. I didn't think like that when I was a kid. But they have a real consciousness about it that I'd like to think comes from the years of attention we've put into this. I mean, that's the least we should do for these men and women, veterans and military spouses, is to make sure they come back to jobs that pay, to career opportunities, that these spouses are able to add a second income to their households, because these families do not have a lot of resources. I'm not a big fan of young kids having Facebook. It's not something they need. It's not necessary. Barack didn't pledge riches, only a life that would be interesting. On that promise he delivered. The President, Barack Obama, asked for a commitment of, I think, 100,000 jobs for veterans and military spouses over the next couple of years. And we announced during the tour last week that we have gotten more than 60,000 jobs, and we're well on our way to just crashing that goal out of the water, because what businesses are understanding is that these men and women are some of the most highly trained resources that we have in this country. Sometimes the issue is about whether families and communities think girls are even worthy of an education in the first place. It's about whether girls are valued only for their labor and reproductive capacities or for their minds as well. And it's about whether women are viewed as second-class citizens or as full human beings entitled to the same rights and opportunities as men. He's always asking, is that new? I haven't seen that before. It's like, why don't you mind your own business? Solve world hunger. Get out of my closet. Some kids have never seen what a real tomato looks like off the vine. They don't know where a cucumber comes from. And that really affects the way they view food. So a garden helps them really get their hands dirty, literally, and understand the whole process of where their food comes from. And I wanted them to see just how challenging and rewarding it is to grow your own food, so that they would better understand what our farmers are doing every single day across this country and have an appreciation for that American tradition of growing our own food and feeding ourselves. Hope is necessary. It's a necessary concept. And Barack Obama didn't just talk about hope because he thought it was just a nice slogan to get votes. We have to remember that it's usually women who are making the healthcare decisions for their families. True equality would mean making sure that there's equity in terms of how insurance reimburses certain procedures. Making sure that we have preventative care that's covered so women can get their mammograms and pap screens without extra charges. Every elected official on this planet should understand, don't play with our children, don't do it. An educational foundation is only part of the equation. In order for creativity to flourish and imagination to take hold, we also need to expose our children to the arts from a very young age. When I get up and work out, I'm working out just as much for my girls as I am for me, because I want them to see a mother who loves them dearly, who invests in them, but who also invests in herself. It's just as much about letting them know as young women that it is okay to put yourself a little higher on your priority list. We all need to start making some changes to how our families eat. Now, everyone loves a good Sunday dinner. Me included. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is when we eat Sunday dinner Monday through Saturday. Style helps distinguish you. It's a great potential opportunity that people tend to leave by the wayside. Success is only meaningful and enjoyable if it feels like your own. Exercise is really important to me, it's therapeutic. So if I'm ever feeling tense or stressed or like I'm about to have a meltdown, I'll put on my iPod and head to the gym or out on a bike ride along Lake Michigan with the girls. Women in particular need to keep an eye on their physical and mental health, because if we're scurrying to and from appointments and errands, we don't have a lot of time to take care of ourselves. We need to do a better job of putting ourselves higher on our own to-do list. But we need a medical community that's trained and knowledgeable and working on advancement. You work hard for what you want in life. Value everyone's contribution and treat everyone with respect. I think that mentoring is such a critical part of the role I can play in my position. I see how little bits of exposure and big bits of exposure really change my girls significantly, and I want that for more girls around the country and the world. Slowly but surely, we're beginning to turn the tide on childhood obesity in America. Together, we are inspiring leaders from every sector to take ownership of this issue. For me, being a mother made me a better professional, because coming home every night to my girls reminded me what I was working for. And being a professional made me a better mother, because by pursuing my dreams, I was modeling for my girls how to pursue their dreams. I was blessed throughout my entire career. I had people rooting for me. It started with my parents, but it extended to almost every teacher that I had. Even when I was a young lawyer, there were other women and men in the firm who took me under their wing. I have a very eclectic iPod. So I've got my cardio people, so it's anything from Beyoncé to some Jay-Z to Janelle Monáe, her song Tightrope. That's a good cardio song. And then I've got Sting. I've got Mary J. Blige. I've got the Beatles. I've got Michael Jackson. I try to pick the songs that I personally love. Whether you come from a council estate or a country estate, your success will be determined by your own confidence and fortitude. The fact is, with every friendship you make, and every bond of trust you establish, you are shaping the image of America projected to the rest of the world. That is so important. So when you study abroad, you're actually helping to make America stronger. And I love that even in the toughest moments, when we're all sweating it, when we're worried that the bill won't pass, and it seems like all is lost, Barack never lets himself get distracted by the chatter and the noise. Just like his grandmother, he just keeps getting up and moving forward. With patience and wisdom, and courage and grace. I like to talk about my obsession with French fries, because I don't want people to think that Let's Move is about complete, utter deprivation. It's about moderation and real-life changes and ideas that really work for families. You know, you have to start with hope. You don't get anywhere in this country without hope. So it's a necessity. What Barack says is that people have to understand hope isn't just blind optimism. It isn't passive. It isn't just sitting there waiting for things to get better. Hope is the vision that you have to have. It's the inspiration that moves people into action. There are more people engaged in this political process in this year than we've seen in my lifetime. And it is all because of hope, because people believe in the possibility of something unseen. It is my hope that our garden's story and the stories of gardens across America will inspire families, schools, and communities to try their own hands at gardening and enjoy all the gifts of health, discovery, and connection a garden can bring. I think I'm probably more typical of the average American who doesn't have a connection to a military community. Millions of Americans who know that Barack understands their dreams. That Barack will fight for people like them. And that Barack will finally bring the change we need. We're, President Barack Obama and I, clear on the fact that we have to stay humble and prayerful. We have to dig down deep to our roots. When things come together, we know some of it is Barack, some of it is us, but a lot of it has nothing to do with either of us. What I know for sure is that all the sacrifice and challenges we face are worth it if we're creating a better future for our kids. I just think if the adults are always thinking about the world we want to leave for our kids, we're going to make the right choices every single time. These are things that we hear from military families everywhere we go. But on PTSD, the thing that I want to make sure people understand is that the vast majority of veterans and military families aren't dealing with any kind of mental health. But there are. These are what are called the invisible wounds of this war. And many times they don't present. This year's 2016 White House holiday theme is the gift of the holidays, and our decorations reflect some of our greatest gifts as a nation, from our incredible military families, to the life-changing impact of a great education. Don't worry about what candidates have done or said, just vote for the Democrats. Then, afterwards, you can go eat fried chicken. What I love about design is the artistic and scientific complexity that also becomes useful. We can make a commitment to promote vegetables and fruits and whole grains on every part of every menu. We can make portion sizes smaller and emphasize quality over quantity. And we can help create a culture, imagine this, where our kids ask for healthy options instead of resisting them. Since we started the Let's Move initiative, I've been looking for as many ways as possible to help families and kids lead healthier lives. And I've come to realize that if we were going to take just one step to make ourselves and our families healthier, probably the single best thing we could do is to simply drink more water. It's as simple as that. Drink more water. My first job, in all honesty, is going to continue to be mom-in-chief. Making sure that in this transition, which will be even more of a transition for the girls, that they are settled and that they know they will continue to be the center of our universe. I want to send a very clear message to the men and women who are wearing, or who have worn, our country's uniform and to their spouses. When you have finished your service to our nation, you've got 2,000 great American companies ready and waiting to bring you on board. Even my husband is happier when I'm happy. He has always said, you figure out what you want to do, because he's discovered that personal happiness is connected to everything. At the end of the day, when it comes time to make that decision, as president, all you have to guide you are your values, and your vision, and the life experiences that make you who you are. For me, exercise is more than just physical, it's therapeutic. When it comes to the health of our families, Barack refused to listen to all those folks who told him to leave health reform for another day, another president. He didn't care whether it was the easy thing to do politically. That's not how he was raised. He cared that it was the right thing to do. Wounded warriors tell me they're not just going to walk again, they're going to run, and they're going to run marathons. We were so young, so in love, and so in debt. Ultimately, this issue is on us. We're the ones who make the decisions about what our kids eat. My experiences at Princeton have made me far more aware of my blackness than ever before. I have found that at Princeton, no matter how liberal and open-minded some of my white professors and classmates try to be toward me, I sometimes feel like a visitor on campus. As if I really don't belong. I mean, let's take the average spouse. You know, you show up in an employer's, office, and it's shown that you've changed jobs every 2 years. Well, to many employers that could be viewed as a red flag. But the truth is that you've made those moves because you're serving your country, and each time you've found a career, and you've been able to provide for your family, and you've continued to volunteer, and on and on and on. We all grew up in communities with grandmothers who cooked 2, 3 vegetables that you had to eat. There was no ifs, ands or buts about it. But that's because many of our grandparents, they had community gardens. There was the vegetable man that came around. There were many other resources that allowed them to have access. So it's not that people don't know or don't want to do the right thing. They just have to have access to the foods that they know will make their families healthier. African American children are significantly more likely to be obese than are white children. Nearly half of African American children will develop diabetes at some point in their lives. People, that's half of our children. We can build our kids the best schools on earth, but if they don't have the basic nutrition they need to concentrate, they're still going to have a challenge learning. Barack knows that we are going to have to make sacrifices. We are going to have to change our conversation. We're going to have to change our traditions, our history. We're going to have to move into a different place as a nation. I am not asking anyone to take the fun out of childhood. As we all know, treats are one of the best parts of being a kid. Instead, the goal here is to empower parents instead of undermining them as they try to make healthier choices for their families. You see, at the end of the day, my most important title is still Mom-in-Chief. My daughters are still the heart of my heart and the center of my world. As always, many of our troops are far from home this Christmas time of year, and their families are serving and sacrificing right along with them. Their courage and dedication allow the rest of us to enjoy this season. That's why we've tried to serve them as well as they've served this country. Now, a good education is about so much more than just learning geometry or memorizing dates in history. All of that is important, but an education is also about exploring new things, discovering what makes you come alive, and then being your best at whatever you choose. We can all agree that in the wealthiest nation on earth, all children should have the basic nutrition they need to learn and grow and to pursue their dreams, because in the end, nothing is more important than the health and well-being of our children. These are the basic values that we all share, regardless of race, party, religion. This is what we share. These are the values that this bill embodies. I don't, as my mom would say, sweat the small stuff in our relationship. Because when I think of day-to-day irritations that you might have with the one you love, they're nothing compared to the bigger task at hand. There's no expert on this planet who says that the government telling people what to do actually does any good with this issue. This is going to require an effort on everyone's part. I tell my kids, I am thinking about you every other minute of my day. The issues facing working women and their families are closest to my heart. I decided to focus intently on the challenges military wives face, because they juggle the same pressures as their non-military peers, all while coping as single parents while their loved ones are overseas. I wanted to help make their voices heard. Childhood obesity issue is critically important to me because it's critically important to the health and success of our kids, and of this nation, ultimately. My priority will be making sure my family is happy and settled. Politics is a waste of time. People are always going to have opinions, and people have a right to their opinions, particularly when you're the First Lady. You're representing the nation. I've tried to be at peace with the choices that I make first, and then be open to everyone else's reflection. I talk about the food issue. I'm really coming at it from pre-White House times, when I was a working mother with a busy husband, a very demanding job, and 2 little kids to feed. I had to learn what it means to feed and care for your kids in a country where fast food is abundant, where time is a rarity, where eating out is a trend, because families are so busy. Yes, I'm First Lady, but I know the struggles. One thing that I've learned from male role models is that they don't hesitate to invest in themselves, with the view that, if I'm healthy and happy, I'm going to be a better support to my spouse and children. And I've found that to be the case. Once my kids were settled, the next thing I did was take care of my own health and sanity. And made sure that I was exercising and felt good about myself. I'd bring that energy to everything else that I did, the career, relationship, on and on and on. I was blessed throughout my entire career. I had people rooting for me. It started with my parents, but it extended to almost every teacher that I had. There's so much going on in the healthcare system that makes it difficult for women to really have a strong economic hold if insurance is always an issue. Barack Obama was always special, you know? And not special, like, he's gonna be important, he's gonna be president. He was special in terms of his honesty, his sincerity, his compassion for other people. That's the advice I would give to women. Don't look at the bank book or the title. Look at the heart. Look at the soul. Look at how the guy treats his mother and what he says about women. How he acts with children he doesn't know. And, more important, how does he treat you? When you're dating a man, you should always feel good. You should never feel less than. You should never doubt yourself. You shouldn't be in a relationship with somebody who doesn't make you completely happy and make you feel whole. And if you're in that relationship and you're dating, then my advice is, don't get married. My view is that if you can't run your own house, you certainly can't run the White House. Can't do it. After I got out of law school and worked in a big law firm, I thought, there are so many kids like me, in my neighborhood, that could be here if they had more support from their families, better financial aid. But the gap is so wide once you miss that opportunity. So I was always interested in figuring out, how do you bridge that? I felt, as a lawyer, when I was mentoring and working with kids, that I gained a level of groundedness that I just couldn't get sitting on the 47th floor of a fancy firm. There are so many really good role models out there, we just have to make sure that we don't glorify just one type. We have the first Latina Supreme Court Justice, Sonia Sotomayor, who was ready to be a force in kids' lives. I could name hundreds of people like her. We have had with Barack Obama some just amazing experiences traveling abroad, being able to introduce our children to the world. I'm also humbled by the response and the receptiveness, not just here in America, but around the world. There's a part of that warmth and enthusiasm and hope that is surprising and humbling. When I was a young lawyer, there were other women and men in the firm who took me under their wing. Sometimes mentors don't find you, sometimes you seek them out. You shouldn't hesitate to plop yourself in someone's office and ask them to be that support. Oftentimes, they're flattered and glad to lend a hand. So I would encourage any reader to seek out a mentor, then follow through and be very focused and persistent. I've always tried to make sure that what I do really connects with the broader agenda of what my husband Barack Obama is trying to do. But I also find that I have to be very passionate myself about the issue to be able to represent it well. One of the big issues that I've talked a lot about is childhood health, nutrition and obesity. My children are very blessed. That's why I think that mentoring is such a critical part of the role I can play in this position. I see how little bits of exposure and big bits of exposure really change my girls significantly, and I want that for more girls around the country and the world. One reason we planted the White House vegetable garden was to set an example about what food can mean, but to also begin a broader conversation about how we're feeding our kids, what they know about the food that they eat, how they're taking care of themselves. We're gathering a group of women around the administration to serve over a longer period of time as mentors to girls in need. If we can have that kind of impact in one night, just imagine if we were working with girls over the course of a year or two. We can change lives. My role models were the people in my life. My mom, for sure. My dad. The teachers. For me, role modeling was immediate. It was touchable. It was rare for me to idolize a movie star or a singer. Because, truly, children connect with who is in their lives, present and accounted for. Childhood obesity isn't some simple, discrete issue. There's no one cause we can pinpoint. There's no one program we can fund to make it go away. Rather, it's an issue that touches on every aspect of how we live and how we work. I know what makes me happy. I pick the clothes that make me happy. Sometimes people like them, sometimes they don't. I try to listen to my own internal guide. When I was younger, I could eat whatever I wanted, as long as I exercised. Or if I didn't exercise and just watched what I ate, I'd maintain. Now I have to do both. Our life before moving to Washington was filled with simple joys. Saturdays at soccer games, Sundays at Grandma's house. And a date night for Barack and me was either dinner or a movie, because as an exhausted mom, I couldn't stay awake for both. I want the young people to pay attention because, see, back when I first met Barack, we started dating, he had everything going for him. All right, ladies, listen to this. This is what I want you to be looking for. Yes, he was handsome, still is. I think so. He was charming, talented, and oh so smart, truly. But that is not why I married him. Now, see, I want the fellas to pay attention to this. You all listening? What truly made me fall in love with Barack Obama was his character. You hear me? It was his character. It was his decency, his honesty, his compassion and conviction. Throughout my life, I've learned to make choices that make me happy and make sense for me. Even my husband is happier when I'm happy. Good health is multifaceted, it's physical, it's internal, it's my diet, and my emotional state. It's all tied in together. We as parents are our children's first and best role models, and this is particularly true when it comes to their health. We can't lie around on the couch eating French fries and candy bars and expect our kids to eat carrots and run around the block. I am only as good as my children are. My sense is that being a first lady is a full-time job, but I'll know more when the time comes. People have notions of what a wife's role should be in this process, and it's been a traditional one of blind adoration. My model is a little different. I think most real marriages are. I mean, hope doesn't get actualized in 3.5 years. If that were the case, we'd be out of luck as a country. I've always been a closet jock, but when I got married and had kids, that fell by the wayside. It's hard to change adults, and it's hard to change it from a political position or a perceived political position. The one thing I believe is that families are off limits. And I think my husband said it, and he was clear on that. And I totally agree with him. And that's why the president has asked the entire government to step up, on his part. I mean, there are things that the private sector needs to do. There are things that the government needs to do. We've gotten commitments from medical schools, from nursing schools, to step up and increase that pool of knowledgeable individuals. My kids are normal. If they could eat burgers and fries and ice cream every day, they would. And so would I, but that doesn't sustain us. One of the things I've done personally is bring my girlfriends into my health and fitness journeys. We're our kids' first and best role models. So the first question is, What are you as a mom or a dad doing every day, or every week, to start getting into the good habits? Start, as parents, with yourselves. Number 1. See, that's why Barack's running, to end the war in Iraq responsibly, to build an economy that lifts every family, to make sure healthcare is available for every American, and to make sure that every child in this nation has a world-class education all the way from preschool to college. It wasn't so long ago that I was a working mom myself. And I know that sometimes, much as we all hate to admit it, it's just easier to park the kids in front of the TV for a few hours, so we can pay the bills or do the laundry or just have some peace and quiet for a change. It should be fun introducing kids to fruits and vegetables. If you start young, it will be something that they'll attach to really quickly. Fruits and vegetables for some kids are scary and not fun. Gardening has increased. Community gardens have increased significantly. There are 50% more community gardens right here in Washington, D.C. Like so many American families, our families weren't asking for much. They didn't begrudge anyone else's success or care that others had much more than they did. In fact, they admired it. Sometimes, it's just easier to say yes to that extra snack or dessert, because frankly, it is exhausting to keep saying no. It's exhausting to plead with our kids to eat just one more bite of vegetables. When I hear about negative and false attacks, I really don't invest any energy in them, because I know who I am. And Barack and I were raised with so many of the same values, like you work hard for what you want in life. That your word is your bond. That you do what you say you're going to do. That you treat people with dignity and respect, even if you don't know them and even if you don't agree with them. The work-life balance is a harsh reality for so many women, who are forced every day to make impossible choices. Do they take their kids to the doctor and risk getting fired? Do they work weekends so they can afford to send their kids to better childcare, even though it means even less time with their families? Do they take another shift at work so they can pay for piano lessons for their kids, even though it means they have to stop volunteering for the TA? It just shouldn't be this difficult to raise healthy families. I've always tried to make sure that what I do really connects with the broader agenda of what my husband is trying to do. When I was little, I wanted to be a mother, because that's who I saw. I saw my mom caring for me. I didn't play doctor. I didn't play lawyer. I didn't have those visions until I was in college, meeting people who were doing those things. That's why we're trying to encourage moms, teachers, fathers, to be that presence in their children's lives, in their communities, because it really makes a difference. Today jazz music is performed and listened to by people of all ethnicity, backgrounds, ages and creeds. A lot of young people think they're invincible, but the truth is young people are knuckleheads. Now young people can get insurance for as little as $50 a month, less than the cost of gym shoes. And then there's this guy, Barack Obama, who lost. I could take up a whole afternoon talking about his failures, but he lost his first race for Congress, and now he gets to call himself my husband. Parents have a right to expect that their efforts at home won't be undone each day in the school cafeteria or in the vending machine in the hallway. Parents have a right to expect that their kids will be served fresh, healthy food that meets high nutritional standards. Child hunger and child obesity are really just two sides of the same coin. Both rob our children of the energy, the strength and the stamina they need to succeed in school and in life. And that, in turn, robs our country of so much of their promise. We are living in a time where we just don't have enough time. People are rushed. They're overworked, overscheduled. Not enough resources. But the thing that I want people to understand in this campaign is that families can make small manageable changes in their lives that can have pretty significant impacts. I felt, as a lawyer, when I was mentoring and working with kids, that I gained a level of groundedness that I just couldn't get sitting on the 47th floor of a fancy firm. Selfishly, it gives me joy. It makes me feel like my life has a purpose. We don't need new discoveries or new inventions to reverse this trend. We have the tools at our disposal to reverse it. All we need is the motivation, the opportunity and the willpower to do what needs to be done. With this report, we have a very solid roadmap that we need to make these goals real, to solve this problem within a generation. Earlier in my college career, there was no doubt in my mind that as a member of the Black community I was somehow obligated to this community and would utilize all of my present and future resources to benefit this community first and foremost. Some of my best memories are sitting on my dad's lap, cheering on Olga and Nadia, Carl Lewis and others for their brilliance and perfection. When you walk through that door of opportunity, you don't slam it shut behind you. One of the things I want all the kids here to remember is that these Major League Soccer stars were not born superstar athletes. Many of them started out just like many of you, playing on a team at school, or just kicking a ball around on the playground with their friends. But they stuck with it. And I tell this to my girls all the time. I mean, you get to the point when things you enjoy start getting hard. That's when you know you're getting good, and you have to stick through it. With this new initiative, Disney is doing what no major media company has ever done before in the United States. And what I hope every company will do going forward when it comes to the ads they show and the food they sell. They're asking themselves one simple question: is this good for our kids? I didn't just start with local city officials because I knew that they would understand the problem. I started with them because I knew that our cities, towns and counties would be a key part of the solution to this issue. There is no one-size-fits-all policy or program that can solve this problem. And Washington certainly does not have all the answers. Instead, many of the best, most innovative, most effective solutions start in our city halls and our towns and our county councils. Doing the impossible is the history of this nation. It is how this country was built. Just keep focusing on the work that you're doing. Focus on what's in front of you today. And don't read the papers, just go campaign. Just do your thing. Talk to people directly. When the average child is now spending nearly 8 hours a day in front of some kind of screen, many of their opinions and preferences are being shaped by the marketing campaigns you all create. And that's where the problem comes in. And I'm here today with one simple request, and that is to do even more and move even faster to market responsibly to our kids. Let's move. It's not about having government tell people what to do, because government doesn't have all the answers. As women, we cannot afford to neglect ourselves. I never thought I'd be on Sesame Street with Elmo and Big Bird. I'm still thrilled. I'm on a high. My most important title is Mom-in-Chief. Kids who participate in school meal programs get roughly half of their calories each day at school. This is an extraordinary responsibility. But it's also an opportunity. And it's why one of the single most important things we can do to fight childhood obesity is to make those meals at school as healthy and nutritious as possible. And that's my message to voters. This isn't about Barack It's not about person on that ballot, it's about you. And for most of the people we are talking to, blacks, a Democratic ticket is the clear ticket that we should be voting on, regardless of who said what or did this. That shouldn't even come into the equation. I joke that I stick with the job because it covers my insurance, but the reality is that my career has always been very important to me. It's all about patience and persistence. You often have to expose a child to a new food numerous times before he or she will begin to like it. So keep trying. To be a good parent, you need to take care of yourself so that you can have the physical and emotional energy to take care of your family. What I love about design is the artistic and scientific complexity that also becomes useful. Great designers also pursue a mission. Great designers design with mankind in mind. The crossroads of science and art, innovation and inspiration are what I love about design. To get kids involved in meal planning and preparation, create games out of trying new foods, and provide ample opportunities for physical activity, recognizing it may take some time to find an activity they truly enjoy. Every Thanksgiving, Barack sits down to call some of our troops and thank them for their service. When he tells me about these conversations, it always reminds me of how blessed we are to live in a country where men and women will stand up to protect our freedoms and preserve our way of life. And whenever I've had the chance to meet with these heroes and their families, I've always walked away inspired by their courage and in awe of their strength. I try to be thoughtful about spreading the wealth, young designers. Mixing things up is important to me. The biggest obstacle facing girls is education, education, education. There are too many kids who think high school is a pit stop to fame and fortune. I want girls in this country to think education is the coolest, most important thing they could ever do in their lives. I want to feel like the things I did made a difference. That's one of the reasons I spend time greeting people on rope lines, because I'm always thinking, maybe this interaction, particularly if I'm meeting kids, will change someone's life. That's how I think about the work I do as First Lady. It's a rare spotlight. I want to make sure I don't waste it. No, I think that if he had known he would be president, he would have started dyeing his hair, like, 10 years ago. Now it's too late. We have to make sure that our kids still feel good about themselves no matter what their weight, no matter how they feel. We need to make sure that our kids know that we love them no matter who they are, what they look like, what they're eating. Our kids didn't do this to themselves. They don't decide the sugar content in soda or the advertising content of a television show. Kids don't choose what's served to them for lunch at school, and shouldn't be deciding what's served to them for dinner at home. And they don't decide whether there's time in the day or room in the budget to learn about healthy eating or to spend time playing outside. Over the years I've become more confident in people's ability to recognize a good thing. My husband and I make physical activity a priority in our lives, and our daughters love being active as well. And while we each have sports and activities we enjoy, we try to go for hikes or bike rides together whenever we get the chance. We've found that the best way to help our girls be active is to find activities they truly enjoy. Discriminating against same-sex couples just isn't right. It's hard to make speeches with your hair in your face. My experiences at Princeton have made me far more aware of my blackness than ever before. Barack puts on his suit and tie, and he's out the door. I'm getting my hair, makeup, the kids, I gotta brush their hair. You know, he's always looking like, where are you? Where are you going? But yeah, you know it's fun to look pretty. It's always positive to hear how many people are willing to step up, whether it is the employment community, mental health community, or medical community. For the first time, the nation will have goals, benchmarks, and measurable outcomes that will help us tackle the childhood obesity epidemic one child, one family, and one community at a time. Investing in girls' education is the very best thing we can do, not just for our daughters and granddaughters, but for their families, their communities, and their countries. One thing I want to clarify, that every service member, veteran, wants us to remember, is that the vast majority of people returning from service come back completely healthy. But when we do come across someone who is struggling, we have to develop a culture of open arms and acceptance so that they feel comfortable saying, "I'm a veteran. And by the way, I need little help." This is something we need to do in this country around mental health as a whole, destigmatizing mental health. We need to support Mary Burke for governor. We're going to have to change our traditions, our history. While budgets are tight right now, there are schools across the country that are showing that it doesn't take a whole lot of money or resources to give our kids the nutrition they deserve. What it does take, however, is effort. What it does take is imagination. What it does take is a commitment to our children's futures. The idea that we are our brother's keeper and our sister's keeper. That we should treat others as we would want to be treated. And that we care for the sick, feed the hungry, and welcome the stranger, no matter where they come from, or how they practice their faith. We learned about dignity and decency, that how hard you work matters more than how much you make. That helping others means more than just getting ahead yourself. I know what it feels like to struggle to get the education that you need. Celebrating the holidays in the White House over these past 8 years has been a true privilege. We've been able to welcome over 500,000 guests. Our outstanding pastry chefs have baked 200,000 holiday cookies. And Barack Obama has treated the American people to countless dad jokes. In the 10 cities with the nation's highest obesity rates, the direct costs connected with obesity and obesity-related diseases are roughly $50 million per 100,000 residents. And if these 10 cities just cut their obesity rates down to the national average, all added up they combine to save nearly $500 million in healthcare costs each year. I think in the end, I want to make sure that my kids come out of this thing on the other end in one piece. But I also know that that's how the rest of the country feels as well, so for that I am grateful. I think any family would, any mother would their children. The president's job is a lot harder. And that's why I'm working hard to get him re-elected, because he's handled himself with a level of grace and poise that not many people could given the challenges that he's faced. To be able to do it in the warmth of the White House and to do it around people who do care about my kids in a country that has been respectful of my children and their privacy, it has been less stressful than I would have imagined for me. I have the privilege of working on the issues that I choose and the issues that I feel most passionate about. It's been a privilege. And I come here as a daughter, raised on the south side of Chicago, by a father who was a blue-collar city worker and a mother who stayed at home with my brother and me. For the first time in my adult lifetime, I am really proud of my country. And not just because Barack has done well, but because I think people are hungry for change. And I have been desperate to see our country moving in that direction. Fashion is about so much more than just a pretty pair of pumps or the perfect hemline. For so many people across the country, it is a calling, it is a career, and it's a way they feed their families. America is just downright mean. The realities are that, as a black man, Barack can get shot going to the gas station, I was an incredibly devoted student, and I would often wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning to study. But even so, there were still people who thought that a girl like me with a background like mine wasn't really college material. And let's be clear, it's not enough just to limit ads for foods that aren't healthy. It's also going to be critical to increase marketing for foods that are healthy. I had the honor of meeting a young Pakistani woman named Malala Yousafzai, who was shot and nearly killed just for trying to go to school. I also heard about how nearly 300 girls in Nigeria were kidnapped from their school dorms in the middle of the night. There are girls like this in every corner of the globe. In fact, there are more than 62 million girls worldwide not attending school, and that's an outrage. Let girls learn issue has always been personal for me. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood on the south side of Chicago where most folks, including my parents, didn't have college degrees. But with a lot of hard work, and a lot of financial aid, I had the chance to attend Princeton and Harvard Law School, and that gave me the confidence to pursue my ambitions. I don't have the stressful job Barack Obama does. I come here tonight as a sister, blessed with a brother who is my mentor, my protector and my lifelong friend. And I come here as a wife who loves my husband and believes he will be an extraordinary president. It's not about government telling people what to do. It's about each of us, in our own families, in our own communities, standing up and demanding more for our kids. And it's about companies like Walmart answering that call. Even if we give parents all the information they need and we improve school meals and build brand new supermarkets on every corner, none of that matters if when families step into a restaurant, they can't make a healthy choice. The problem is when that fun stuff becomes the habit. And I think that's what's happened in our culture. Fast food has become the everyday meal. We have to design policies that have meaningful impacts on the quality of life of women and families. And that's something that I know I can speak passionately about because whether I'm in the White House as First Lady, as long as I have kids and I'm trying to have a life, I'm gonna be trying to make this balance work. It's all about, continuing to get to know ourselves in a very diverse and complicated country that is America. It is a wonderful place to live. But because it is so diverse, our challenges are complex. And the first thing we have to do is vote. Hey, no, not just once in a while. Not just when my husband or somebody you like is on the ballot. But in every election at every level, all of the time. I always want to be on the cusp of being in the best shape that I can be. I'm varying my workouts, so it's not just cardio, but also includes moves to maintain my flexibility. What I tell my kids is, I'm preparing you for college and for life. So, having independence, knowing how to set your own boundaries, figuring out how to make that balance. We still have screen time rules. I would be depressed if I felt I could never eat the things that I love. I also don't want my girls to be obsessed about food. I've seen how the issues that come across a president's desk are always the hard ones, the problems where no amount of data or numbers will get you to the right answer. I have never felt more confident in myself, more clear on who I am as a woman. But I am constantly thinking about my own health and making sure that I'm eating right and getting exercise and watching the aches and pains. I want to be this really fly 80-90-year-old. In fact, In the last job I had before coming to the White House, I remember this clearly. I was on maternity leave with Sasha, still trying to figure out what to do with my life, and I got a call for an interview for this position, a senior position at the hospitals. And I thought, okay, here we go. So I had to scramble to look for babysitting, and couldn't find one. Another suggestion is to cook a meal, maybe not every night, but a couple more times a week than you usually do. That way you have leftovers, and you take your lunch to work. We're all bombarded with so many dietary messages that it's hard to find time to sort through all this information, but we do have time to take a look at our kids' plates. My goal is to be a great-looking 70-year-old. I won't mind being 70, but I want people to say, "You're 70?" Barack, like any leader, is human. Fashion is not just about what we wear, but fashion is also a business. It is an art, it's a career that involves science, engineering, accounting and so much more. People can learn about the math behind Charles James designs, and think, maybe I should pay closer attention to geometry this semester. I've always been a closet jock. With exercising, the more you do it, the more you get into it. And the more you see results, the more you're pushing for the next level. Happiness for me is when my kids are good and when my family is whole. My happiness is measured against my kids' happiness. When they're in a good place, I feel really good. I always want to be on the cusp of being in the best shape that I can be. What I'm discovering is that the older you get, the more work you have to do to stay there. I try to tell young people to get in shape now, because it's easier. If you're 30 and want to drop 10 pounds, all you have to do is just walk. I love French fries, I like a good burger, and I like pie. And that's okay. I would be depressed if I felt I could never eat the things that I love. I also don't want my girls to be obsessed about food. We don't have a no junk food rule, I just want them to think about their choices. I am a sleeper. When you wake up at 4:30 in the morning to do a workout, you're sleepy at 8 in the evening. By 10 o'clock at the latest, I'm in bed. When you're really trying to make serious change, you don't want people to get caught up in emotion, because change isn't emotion. Because change isn't emotion. It's real work and organization and strategy. That's just the truth of it. I mean, you pull people in with inspiration, but then you have to roll up your sleeves and you've got to make sacrifices and you have got to have structure. Much of what we do with our kids is social and that's good, and we shouldn't stop all that. I mean, how boring would it be that, no, we can't eat anything out so we're just going to go home and sit in the closet and wait till the next day. That's where you just have to get creative. There are all these trampoline parks, and there's bowling and there's roller skating. I'm trolling through the recesses of my mind for the things I did with my kids when they used to like to do things with me. They don't want to be around me now. I look back on these times, all those little funny pottery dishes that you'd pay for, and they'd paint, and they were ugly, and you glazed them, and you'd go back, pick them up, and it's like, oh, now I've got to put this on my desk. There's all that kind of stuff. So we know that it's not enough for us to simply encourage more people to study abroad. We also need to make sure that they can actually afford it. Oh, I can't play soccer, and I'm not a great swimmer. I won't drown, but you won't see me doing laps in a pool. We got a commitment that 3 million nurses are going to be trained to better identify these signs of PTSD. Because, you know, When these troops come home and they become veterans and they go back into the civilian community, they're not always going through the VA system for medical care. They're going to show up at community hospitals and clinics. For me, as a mother, I just can't put into words how important it is for every American, for every mother, for every person in this country, to have health care. Even in these tough economic times, Barack Obama has left the VA budget as is so that they're prepared to deal with this influx of men and women who are coming home and dealing with a whole array of issues, not just around mental health but just caregiving and the stresses of reconnecting with families who have been away from each other for a very long time. I think employers need help in understanding how to translate a military career. This year, 1.7 million young people will be participating in Olympic and Paralympic sports in their communities, many of them for the very first time. And that is so important, because sometimes all it takes is that first lesson, or clinic, or class to get a child excited about a new sport. This summer, together with our children, we can support Team USA not just by cheering them on, but by striving to live up to the example they set. There are many different ways that a military person's career can be translated. It's been so important that the Chamber of Commerce, for example, has hosted hiring fairs that are specifically targeted to military communities. I think that people are tired. They're tired of the same old kind of politics. People want a new tone to politics. We're starting to see, as the economy improves, that the unemployment rate among veterans and military spouses, we're seeing some improvement in those numbers. And that's a good thing. It's important for us not to lose sight of the fact that this is a family that's grieving and there's been a tremendous loss. And we all have to rally around that piece of it. Moving to the White House, whatever stresses would be on my husband and me, we could handle. We are grown-ups. But it wouldn't be until the day that my kids came home and said to me, "I like it here," that I'd feel like I could breathe and know that we're all going to be okay here. Kids, everybody can get behind. It's a bipartisan thing. We care about our kids' health. But the truth is, it's very important for us to talk to parents, in particular mothers, because it's really our self-esteem, it's our initiative. Not everybody is going to run a marathon or do a triathlon. It's not necessary to do that to be in good health. You look at all the sporting companies out there. I won't name names, but we know who they are. Good brands and logos and things like that, and they have to start catering to real women. Even in how their sports apparel is designed, and the commercials, you want to look at a commercial and see yourself. You do not keep American democracy in suspense. Because, look, too many people have marched and protested and fought and died for this democracy. Truly 1% of this country serves and protects the freedoms of the other 99% of us, so many of us don't have that connection. Fortunately, Jill Biden does. She's a Blue Star mom. Their son was in the National Guard, or is is a reservist. I was out there meeting with a lot of working moms, and whenever I would gather a group of women, there was always a voice that was unfamiliar to me, and it was the voice of a military spouse, oftentimes a woman, oftentimes working, many times in a position where they've had to move every 2 or 3 years, where their kids have had to change school multiple times, families dealing with multiple deployments, dealing with the stresses of reconnection. Childhood obesity isn't about looks. And it's not about weight. It's about how our kids feel. And those are really the implications of the problem and the words that tell a fuller picture of the challenges that we face. You know, kids struggling in ways that they didn't a generation ago. For me, I look at the faces of my kids and I think about the future that is going to await them and whether they're going to not just have the financial resources to be prepared